This week's episode is brought to you by the Communicore Weekly Disney Removal Service. If you've got Disney stuff just laying around, give us a call and we'll give it a good home.
Communicore Weekly. Come on and get geeky. We bob around boats and five-legged goats. Communicore Weekly. You might get some freaking. You waited all week. I'm sure you already know that it's the greatest online show.
Hello and welcome to Communicore Weekly, the greatest online show and home of the world's first pair of independently born identical twins. I'm George.
And I'm Jeff, and I'm very excited because this is our second to last episode of the second season, if you've been paying attention, everyone out
I'm
there.
glad you finished that. I thought you were going to say our second to last episode ever.
Ever. Well, it might be. I mean, maybe we'll do one more and then we'll just quit.
Yeah, I mean, because we've made all $18 billion each.
Yes.
Obviously.
Yes, and by 18 billion, you probably mean like 18 cents, because that's about as much money I have in my wallet right now.
I'm bad with decimal points.
I'm terrible with decimal points. I don't even understand decimal points.
Well, I'm good with Dewey Decimal points.
Well, you're a librarian. You kind of have to be good with Dewey Decimal
that's
points
true.
for that.
That's true.
I mean, it's kind of a requirement for you, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm tested daily.
Oh,
that's true.
Are you really?
That's true. Yeah, you can almost fill out any subject and I'll tell you the Dewey Decimal number.
Really?
You won't know, but I can fake it.
You could just totally fake it.
Oh, totally.
If there's any librarians out there who are listening, please let me know when George is lying when I say science fiction.
So, we use fiction for that in our library. So, because it's fiction.
I don't know library
That would be
sciences.
the
I'm sorry.
author's last name in our library.
Okay, all right, whatever. Show off. Forget it. Nobody's here to listen to your.
Like a nonfiction subject heading.
I'm done with this game. Nobody wants to hear the history of library sciences, unless it's like the Disney Archive library. Let's just go into the regular Disney history.
It's time for Disney History.
The Rocket Rods, one of those rides that I've heard a lot about, but have never been on before. But they actually opened on May 22nd, 1998 as part of the new Tomorrowland at Disneyland. And they were a new high-speed attraction that ran on the former People Mover track. So riders entered the attraction at the former Circle Vision 360 building, and it's currently the Buzz Lightyear Astro Blasters building, at the front of Tomorrowland. And in the first room, they had huge blueprints of all old and current Tomorrowland attractions that were hung on the walls, and along with former Tomorrowland attraction vehicles, which were they were repainted to look like the blueprints themselves. But some of the ride vehicles I had included 4 People Mover cars, 2 rocket jets, a Space Mountain rocket, and the front of a Disney Mark III Disneyland monorail.
And an interesting and little known fact is Rocket Rods was the name of Rod Stewart's first band. Just saying. So, the more you know, the better.
The more
anyway.
you know.
we need that bumper.
We do.
That drop. Okay, so near the end of the room was a video screen that displayed animated segments from various Disney cartoons of the 1950s through the early 70s, which featured what they thought transportation might look like in the future. All the segments featured radical and somewhat far-fetched concepts of future transportation systems, such as fully automated and auto-guided mobile homes and cars using anti-gravity or magnetic devices to scale walls and objects. Kind of like Back to the Future 2. It's almost 2015, so can you scientists get on that already?
Yeah. What are you guys waiting for already? Jeez.
I want my land speeder.
No, you want a hoverboard.
I want a hoverboard?
Land speeder's Star Wars.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's owned by Disney now.
Oh, okay. So maybe we're closer to getting that one then, probably.
Yeah, that's what we'll say.
Anyway, so each of those segments, they concluded with a short narrated segment that explained how these technologies had evolved into forms of transportation used in 1998, the year that the attraction opened, or what they thought we would use them for in the years to come. And the short narrations, they kind of brought insight to the animated segments and explained to guests that in the world of creativity, there's no end to possibilities, which was actually the theme of the Rocket Rods.
So the next room of the queue was the 9-screen Circle Vision Theater, where guests watch old transportation videos, and including excerpts from the Circle Vision film America the Beautiful, The Timekeeper, and even a video featuring the evolution of General Motors cars to a futuristic version of the Steppenwolf hit Born to Be Wild. And yes, Jeff told me I was not allowed to sing.
Yep.
And it was no. And that version was actually arranged and recorded by former Oingo Boingo member Steve Bartek. Guests then continued down the transit tunnel, which was formerly a backstage area, where guests passed proposals for extending the Rocket Rod system all the way to the John Wayne Airport and other destinations, which would have been awesome.
That would have been really cool, provided that they
was there a room enough for luggage though on those things?
Who knows? Who knows?
Okay, would have been a very straight line.
Yeah. You can't really bank those turns, as we will find out later. So the transit tunnel, it actually led to a series of stairs that circled around the inside of the tower that held the Rocket Rod's platform and the Observatron, which is the former Rocket Jets attraction. And at the top of the stairs, guests would find themselves on the elevated Rocket Rod station in the center of Tomorrowland. And then they would board a 5-seat Rocket Rod before moving forward to a staging area similar to that of drag racing. And they kind of built the anticipation as with the lights when they changed from red to yellow to green, and then the vehicle zoomed away down a straightaway when it worked toward the entrance of Tomorrowland while performing a small wheelie.
Small wheelie. Okay, so the Rocket Rods then took guests through the Star Tours building, then into a tunnel. And in the tunnel, riders experienced the effect of nearly colliding with an oncoming rocket rod. But in reality, it's only the vehicle's reflection in a mirror. Wonder what other attractions they've used that on. Test Track! The Rocket Rod took guests through Space Mountain, offering a very brief view of that attraction. And then the vehicle took riders back outside again, and then into the Carousel Theater, home of Innoventions. I just imagine all these different crashes going on. So after going through a semicircular trip through Innoventions, the Rocket Rod took riders through a series of turns and dips above Autopia and the former submarine voyage. Then, the rod passed right next to the Disneyland monorail station before entering the Rocket Rod's queue building. The vehicle then travels back up the straightaway to the station. Sounds thrilling, didn't it? Well, guess what? It wasn't.
So
not at all.
No. The Rocket Rods, they actually closed September 2000 for a refurbishment. I'm using air quotes, but you can't see them. A refurbishment that was meant to last until the spring 2001. But while on this refurbishment, no work was ever seen being done on the attraction. And then in April 2001, the Los Angeles Times and the Orange County Register reported that the Rocket Rods would never reopen again because they were terrible. There's a lot of reasons why they closed initially. So, the Rocket Rods, they completed the course of the formerly 16-minute long People Mover section, and they did it in about 3 minutes. And the support structure and track originally built for the People Mover was not meant to be used for such a high-speed attraction, and it really began to weaken a little bit. And another reason is that the Rocket Rods, their budget really wasn't a lot. So they didn't have enough money to bank the curves of the track, so the Rocket Rods had to slow down a lot in order to maneuver the turns, and therefore not really being as thrilling as you thought they were going to be. And the constant changes in the speed, they really caused the vehicle's onboard computer systems to fail quite a bit, and it shut down the attraction. And there were multiple mechanical failures too, and there was I think it was a shoe brake or something once that was launched halfway across Tomorrowland when it broke, and thankfully no one was injured or killed, but in the reality, the attraction itself, it just broke down at least once a day, maybe 10.
Exactly. It was for such a short time period, I didn't get to experience it, but my wife did, and all she remembers is waiting in the show building for at least, or the queue building for at least 2 hours at one point, while they kept starting it and stopping it. But anyway, so the Rocket Rods were scrapped after the closure. One Rocket Rod survived and was placed in front of the Hollywood and Dine restaurant at Disney California Adventure, but it only remained there for a few months, and it was gone by 2002. And after the closure of the Rocket Rods, people really hoped that the People Mover would be reinstalled. Rumors still circulate today, usually stating that the People Mover will return, possibly a copy of the still running Magic Kingdom version of the Tomorrowland Transit Authority. The equipment used for the People Mover only still exists on the Rocket Rod track in some places, which will require much of the equipment to be reinstalled again.
I'm okay with that, though. If they want to build that up again, they
Oh,
should
I
go
am
right
too.
ahead.
I'm assuming they'd have to do a lot of OSHA stuff, though.
More
to it
than
as well.
likely. They should do it, though,
More than
because I
likely.
want the people to move over here. Do
Yeah,
it.
I mean, we'll help sponsor it.
Hey, let's start a Kickstarter right now.
If we each put in our 18 cents, that's 36. We're good.
Boom, halfway there.
He's a nerd, he's a geek, but we all like to hear him speak. So listen up to the words from his speech. It's George's Book of the Week.
Okay, so this week's book is The Vault of Walt, Volume 2, More Unofficial, Unauthorized, Uncensored Disney Stories Never Told by Jim Korkis. Released in 2013, and it has 236 pages. Jim Korkis is probably a very familiar name to most Disney fans. He wrote for a long time under the pen name of Wade Sampson over at Mouse Planet, and, really told a lot of Disney stories that had never seen the light of day. I mean, he'd been researching Disney history since he was like 5 or 6. And off Told Tales, he'd open the phone book, find the animators, and call them and ask them questions. Not that there was a creepy stalker thing. No, never. So what we've got with this book is, okay. So let me stop the full review here. Jeff and I talked about how to look at this book because it's a bunch of tales, not quite 30, that Jim Korkis tells, and it's sort of like deja vu. It's like, wait a minute, I've read this somewhere before. Haven't I? I think so. I know that Jeff spent some time, once we read through the stories, actually looking at some of the originality of the stories, I guess we could say. And why don't you take over this section?
Sure.
So,
Yeah. So, like George said, there's about 28 stories or so. I think it's just it's definitely under 30. I think it's 28.
Okay.
My issue isn't with the content itself. Like George said, Jim has proven himself to be this fantastic Disney historian over many, many years, and he really is an invaluable resource for many of us. I mean, he's helped us out a couple of times too.
Yes, he has.
He knows his material. He knows it well. Nobody's taking that away from him. My issue with the book is that the content is just rehashed material that he's written over the years. Now, the original Vault of Walt with the light blue teal cover, whatever color it is, it's no longer in print, but when it came out, it was fantastic. It was great. We all ate it up, and it was great.
Yep.
But now, Theme Park Press bought the rights to the original book, and then they re-released it in a new form with a red cover. And some of the stories in the original volume made it, but most of them did not. And then this volume, Volume 2, with the yellow cover, has about half full of stories from the original teal-covered volume. And on top of that, all but 2 of the stories in the book are columns that Jim has written for Mouse Planet over the years. And they're just lifted directly from the columns and put into the book with what seems little to no editing sometimes.
Yeah.
And I'm, us, and especially, George too, we're all for Disney history books, especially ones that tell these anecdotal tales that, are just great. But when your book is billed on the cover as Disney Stories Never Told, you shouldn't have 95% of the book be stories that have been told before, especially when that 95% of the stories can be found for free on the internet under the name of the author. Again,
Yes.
The content is really good, but the book itself just seems like a cheap cash grab to me, and I guess it'll confuse people into spending money for content they already have or they already read before. I understand the argument can be made that re-releasing these new volumes of Walt are good because the original version is no longer available, but the folks that own the original version and loyal readers of Jim's column, they'll kind of find themselves having a major case of deja vu when reading, kind of like I did.
Yeah, I mean, the stories are all enjoyable, and they were enjoyable the first time that I read them, over the period of the past 5, 6, or 7 years or longer than that. And I can't fault, Jim and Theme Park Press for re-releasing these. I'm glad they did because the book feels like a more permanent, showcase for these stories. Another story these are all anecdotes. Nowhere in the book does Jim say where he got a lot of these stories. He doesn't have anything to back them up. And that does bother me a little bit coming from the Disney historian side. I'd like to be able to track his stories back, to see where he came from. And in some cases, we know the material was lifted from other places without giving them credit at all. which is, bothers me as a librarian and as a writer, for one thing. I mean, I think what Jeff got down to the nitty gritty is we like it. We like Jim. He's a great storyteller. He's a great writer. He knows a lot of Disney history, but we really wish they wouldn't have marketed this book as new stories or more stories, because Vault of Walt Volume 2 really speaks it's going to have more. So if you already own the first one, you really don't need to pick this one up. But if you're a fan of Jim and you like his stories, his folksy homespun stories, yeah, go ahead and pick this one up. You might enjoy it. And this is the Vault of Walt Volume 2 by Jim Korkis.
What we liked, what we didn't like, Yeas and the Booze, 60-second review.
No, George, no.
What?
Especially if you're going to sing it terribly.
I thought we were doing the whole the William Tell Overture.
No, we're not going to do that. I don't know how many times I'm going to tell you about singing, but especially
no singing on the podcast. I know.
That wasn't even singing.
My monitor. I was okay. Well, anyway, so obviously we're talking about The Lone Ranger, the new Blu-ray release, the big screen adaptation, and I guess we'll both say we were surprised right off the bat because the press was so bad and the reviews were so scathing that I didn't even go see it in the movie theater.
Yeah.
Even
Even when I had an opportunity to see it for free, I didn't go see it.
What? Free?
Well, they were playing. They had like AP screenings at the Muppet Vision Theater in California Adventure when it came out, and I'm like kicking myself now because I really should have seen it on a big screen like that.
Would have enjoyed it then.
I would have enjoyed it. I would have been one of the supporters of the film that said, "Hey guys, don't listen to the press. This movie's awesome." Because guess what, guys? This movie was awesome.
Wow. Okay. Well, I talked to my brother, of course, the one who does all the music for Communicore Weekly. Well, half the music was Steve. Anyway, and he asked me how it compared to John Carpenter, because both of them got
John
slammed.
Carter. John Carpenter is a horror director.
John Carpenter's a horror director. Yes, thank you. I think I'd watched something scary over the weekend. So, John Carter. Anyway, and I at first my initial thought was it was like a toss-up. I think The Lone Ranger was a better film than John Carter because it was so much easier to connect with. It was memorable. There's a cultural touchstone for us with The Lone Ranger. But I told him, I said, this is a great popcorn flick. And I've heard that term bounced around so much in reviews for The Lone Ranger, and especially comments on our Mice Chat review. I thought, it was beautifully filmed. The backdrop of Southwest United States was gorgeous, and the stunts were awesome.
Yeah. I agree. They did a great job. And I'm a Western fan to begin with, so maybe I was predisposed to like this as well. But, I mean, it looked great. The story was pretty straightforward. And as much flack as Johnny Depp got in the press for his portrayal of a Native American, I thought he did a great job of it.
Yeah, he did a good job with it.
I don't think he was offensive at all. I think it worked out really well. But I loved it. I thought the movie was great, and I thought the Blu-ray was great too. There was tons of great stuff on there.
Oh yeah, some of the extras.
Yeah, I mean they had the making.
Or you
of...
mean just the film itself?
Well, just the film itself. They actually did include extras on this disc. Thank God.
Yes, they did. They did. Because, well, the one thing is we did get to see the Army Hammer. Sorry, I laugh every time.
Every time you say that name or someone says the name, you laugh. Army Hammer.
I just laugh. It's just.
See, you just did it again.
Stop it.
Sorry.
It's just so silly. But he would really
Army
kick
Hammer.
my butt, so I'm not going to.
Sorry, I'm done.
This review is going to go on and on and
Sorry.
on. But Mr. Hammer had a
MC.
I would have been like, "Hi, I'm MC Hammer. Don't touch this," and we had just really gone off the rails
we
at
did.
this point. So, but
to get back on the rails,
really
there's a train in the movie.
Yeah, he had a good making of it, where they talked about his adventures in the Southwest, as well as going to. Did they call it cowboy school?
I think it was cowboy school.
I think they call it where they learned how to ride and rope and shoot. And he said the funnest thing was carrying around a gun and flipping it out and showing people. And I was like, okay, fun. But so anyway, back to the film. We loved it. I think I really enjoyed it. I won't say I loved it. I enjoyed it. I had a good time. But when it got to one of the big final scenes and the overture started playing, I was just bouncing along with it and enjoying the ride. And I do believe some of the last couple of big major action scenes were well worth it.
Oh yeah, like that
Well
whole
worth it.
last, what is it, 20 minutes, half hour, the whole ending was just like nonstop action, and I thought it was wonderful. Little side note though, it is a little violent, so if you have kids, little kids, and you don't really want them to see violence, I mean, they don't show really any gore or anything, but there are a lot of people getting shot, there's a lot of craziness going on, but other than that, I think it's a great film. It's definitely one I'm gonna watch again. I know Alex wants to watch it again because he loved it.
Yeah.
But I would say pick it up.
Yeah, it surprised me. The 15-year-old loved it. My wife loved it. My 10-year-old left about halfway through, but his friend that spent the weekend with us stayed and watched the whole thing. So I think it's just a matter of if what they want to watch. But I think, if you get the chance, rent it, pick it up. Maybe pick up through Redbox first, even though they're not a sponsor of the show. Not yet. But yeah, I think, and pick it up, take a look, try it out, and maybe you'll enjoy it.
Sometimes you might see it, sometimes you don't. Hey, look, what's that? It's a five-legged goat.
So for those of you who are Star Wars fans out there, in Episode 4, A New Hope, TK421 was the stormtrooper who wasn't at his post, famously. And this infamous stormtrooper is paid tribute twice in Star Tours in the Q area. Once is on a sign above the defective Captain Rex, the original pilot of Star Tours in the original one, and then later on by the droid scanning the luggage. And when he's scanning one of the luggages, a helmet is in the bag, and the droid wonders why TK421 isn't at his post yet again. So I thought that was a nice little nod to the movie, especially before they owned it.
Yeah, before they owned it.
But now they own it.
You are mine. You are mine now. So, a different type of owning anyway. So, okay, well, anyways, let's end this before I get into more trouble. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to another episode of Communicore Weekly.
Yes, the second to last for the season, not the last ever. I just wanted to clarify.
You scared me again.
I know, that was 2 in one show. I apologize.
Jeez.
I didn't mean to.
Jeez.
But when I'm done scaring George, be sure to leave us a comment or give us a rating on iTunes.
Yeah, and feel free to email us anything you'd like, actually, that you can fit into an email at communicoreweekly@gmail.com.
And also, you can like us on Facebook at facebook.com/CommunicoreWeekly.
Yeah, and follow us both on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Imagineering, and he's at Jeff Heimbuck.
And of course, be sure to call us on the Communicore Weekly hotline at 424-785-4628. Last week we released, finally, our voicemail bag episode, and it was great. So give us a call. Maybe your voicemail can be on the next episode. You never know.
Yeah,
you never know.
Send us your questions. We will answer any question. May not be the right answer, but we'll answer it.
We'll give you an answer for sure. That is definite.
Yes, we'll give you an answer. So, anyway, for Jeff Heimbuck, I'm George Taylor.
And for George Taylor, I'm Jeff Heimbuck. Thanks so much for listening, guys and girls. We'll see you next time on Communicore Weekly, the greatest online show.
Blue 8.